The Nico and Kale mini reworks headline patch 13.9, along with some buffs to weaker foes like Volibear and Trundle, while Jinx is finally receiving a nerf. With the help of our challenger players and analyzing the most recent data, we are set to bring you guys a complete update on the solo queue tier list. But before we get into it, be sure to check out SkillCapped if you want to truly get better at League of Legends. We're the only service that offers a money-back guarantee if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service. We do this because our service really does work, and if it doesn't work for you, you shouldn't pay. Learn more at the end of this video or click the link in the description below. The only item or rune change being pushed to live for 13.9 is a buff to Lichbane. AP on the item is going up from 75 to 85. Twisted Fate, Fizz, and Echo are the 3 champions who will benefit most from these buffs as they build the item as a core pickup in most games. Some Evelynn, Nidalee, and Victor players like building the item as well, so they'll see an indirect boost too. Fizz is definitely a mid laner to watch this patch as he was just directly buffed a few patches back and has been in a great spot, so this Lichbane buff may be enough to push him over the edge. Moving on to the top lane changes, Riot will be partially reverting the nerfs they gave to Aatrox way back in 13.1. Passive damage health ratio is going back up from 4 scaling to 10% to 4 scaling to 12%. Our bonus movement speed is being increased as well from 50 scaling to 80 to 60 scaling to 100. Overall, pretty insignificant buffs that we don't see moving the needle enough to push Aatrox back into the top lane meta. As a result, Aatrox will remain in our top lane A tier for 13.9. The only top laner nerf for 13.9 is going to be Sion. Passive health loss is going from 2 scaling to 19 plus 1 per level to 2.3 scaling to 24.4 plus 1.3 per level. Riot has stated this will shorten the duration of Sion passive by about 1 to 1.5 seconds total. Over the course of thousands of games, you're definitely going to lose out on a kill here or there, but in the grand scheme of things, this nerf should not impact Sion all that much. After all, if you're winning lane and not dying all the time, this change literally doesn't matter. It's more of a nerf to the lethality Sion inting strategy, where getting kills with his passive is actually quite important. For Sion's tier list placement in 13.9, he will find a spot in our top lane A tier. These Kale buffs are looking absolutely incredible. Let's jump right into the R changes, as these are the big ones. Cast time on R is being reduced from 1.5 down to 0.5 seconds. The DPS increase from this change alone is going to drastically improve Kale's dueling power. The AoE damage delay is being increased from 1.5 to 2.5 seconds. Invulnerability duration is going from 2 scaling to 3 seconds to 2.5 seconds at all ranks. Although weaker late game, the added invulnerability time for the early stages of the game is well worth the trade-off, as we see this being a net buff. The AoE radius on Ultimate is being increased from 525 flat to 675 scaling to 775. Damage on R is being lowered from 200 scaling to 500 to 200 scaling to 400. Keep in mind, now that your R cast time is 1 second less, with a bunch of items, the added auto attacks you'll be able to get in will more than make up for this lost R damage. The other changes being issued are centered around Kale's E. On-hit AP ratio is going from 25 to 20%. Passive wave damage is being increased from 15 scaling to 35 to 20 scaling to 41. From a quality of life perspective, these changes are amazing for Kale and will be great for the long-term health of the champion. Where she lands power-wise is difficult to predict due to the unique nature of the changes, so we'll be leaving Kale in the A tier for now, and we'll have a more accurate update for you guys in our mid-patch tier list. Moving on to the top lane tier list, we have Ornn, Poppy, Mordekaiser, Malphite, and Pantheon as the highest priority carries. Now, you might be wondering, well, why is Ornn suddenly in the OP tier? He never got any changes recently, right? Wrong. Ornn's E and R are no longer cleansable, which is a huge buff to the champ, but Riot threw the changes into the bug fix section of the 13.8 patch to where very few people would notice. This bug fix alone has provided Ornn with a huge boost to his teamfight power, especially with Cleanse being such a consistent summoner spell on many ADCs. As a result, Ornn is joining the top lane OP tier for 13.9. Our top 3 low elo picks for top lane include Yorick, Mundo, and Nasus. Best value bans of the patch are Fiora, Darius, and Malphite. Some much needed Volibear buffs are finally on the way, but they're a bit underwhelming, unfortunately. W damage health ratio is going from 5 to 6%. W heal health ratio is also up from 7 scaling to 13% to 8 scaling to 16%. Not completely worthless buffs, but nothing that will drastically increase the power level of Volibear for solo queue. If you guys are considering playing some Volibear this patch and want to learn more about him, our challenger jungler Skillshot is an avid Volibear player, and he's got a bunch of full game commentaries for the champ on our website. We'll be giving the bear the bump from B into A tier for 13.9, but there's still many better options to choose from above him. A pretty nice Amumu buff is being issued with his W base damage going from 12 scaling to 28 to 20 at all ranks. W percent health damage is going from 1 scaling to 1.6% to 1 scaling to 2%. Early game especially, this is a really nice buff to Amumu. As we can see in the background gameplay, 5 ticks of W damage with the buffs is equal to 20 added damage overall. Sometimes you'll even be able to get more than 5 ticks of W off, so the extended skirmish power of Amumu will become a bit stronger early on. Amumu will see the same positional change on the tier list as Volibear, going from B into A. A few base stat buffs are penciled in for Trundle this patch, with his base mana going from 281 to 340 and base attack speed up from 0.6 to 0.67. A buff that likely brings Trundle back into a viable state for solo queue, but nothing that pushes him to the top of the jungle tier list. For now, we'll be leaving the Troll King in the jungle B tier. Bel'Veth will see a bit of a power shift for 13.9, with her early game becoming stronger and the late game taking a hit. Q monster damage is going from 120 to 140% to enhance early clear speed. To compensate, Bel'Veth's attack damage growth is going from 1.7 to 1.5. As you can see from the background gameplay, this equates to 3 less AD at level 18. Early on, these changes are definitely a net win for Bel'Veth, and for high elo especially, we see them more positively skewed. For low elo, however, where games tend to drag out much longer and the early game is not as important, we wouldn't be surprised if Bel'Veth's win rate saw a small drop. Overall, we won't be making any adjustments to Bel'Veth's tier list placement, as she will remain a strong S tier pick in 13.9. There are a bunch of great junglers to choose from right now, with Kha'Zix, Fiddlesticks, Evelynn, and Jarvan being the most optimal carries. Great mix of everything right now, as Jarvan is the best ganking jungler, Evelynn and Fiddle are great farm for 6 champs, and Kha'Zix is the most lethal skirmisher out of the 4. One other minor adjustment we'll be making is moving Lilia into the S tier. Buffs last patch combined with the Cosmic Drive changes have been a little more impactful than originally anticipated, and Lilia is performing very well in solo queue once again. Our top 3 low elo recommendations for jungle include Fiddlesticks, Mordekaiser, and Nocturne. Evelynn, Jarvan, and Kha'Zix are the highest priority jungle bans. Neeko mini rework is hitting the Rift in 13.9, so let's get you up to speed with how things will be shaping out. Neeko will have a brand new passive to where she can turn into any non-epic monster, minion, trap, ward, or plant. All she has to do is stand beside them for 2 seconds and will then be able to click on her bar to become that unit. This will definitely give Neeko passive way more power, especially for those Aram fights where you can disguise yourself as a minion. This change is one we see impacting Neeko way more for the lower ranks, but it's overall a buff for sure. Next up, Q damage is going to be nerfed, with it losing 5 damage at all ranks. AP ratio is up, however, so it's an early game nerf and a late game buff. Looks like Riot wants Neeko to be viable in the jungle, as they're giving her Q 30 scaling to 70 bonus damage to monsters. W change is looking super awesome, as you'll now be able to reactivate Neeko clone and send the clone to a new location. The skill expression of Neeko has just gone up a ton due to this change, which is great to see. W empowered attacks will also be dealing 50 bonus damage to monsters. E will receive the same kind of treatment we saw with Neeko's Q, with its base damage going down by 10 at all ranks, but the AP ratio increased from 60 to 65%. Finally, we have the R changes, and the big one is that when Neeko jumps up into the air, she will suspend all nearby enemies. Before, it was only when you're crashing back to the ground when you would get the CC effect, but now it will start a bit sooner. So that's definitely a buff, but from then on out, it's all nerfs to Neeko R. Spell will no longer provide a shield. Damage from R is going down from 200 scaling to 650 to 150 scaling to 550. AP ratio is also down from 130 to 100%. Cooldown is drastically increased as well, from 90 flat to 120 scaling to 90 seconds. So all in all, Neeko's kit has definitely become stronger, but with so many of the numbers chopped in her spells, it's difficult to say if she'll actually land as a more powerful pick right away. Burst damage is down, but will the new sneaky element of her passive be enough to make up for that? For now, we'll be leaving Neeko in the mid lane A tier and have a more accurate rating for you guys during our mid-patch tier list. Lots of quality life changes being handed out in 13.9, and next in line is Talia. Our cooldown will no longer be locked out when you're dealing damage, only if you're taking damage. This will give Talia some nice added catch power to where she can one-shot a target from brush and then use her R immediately after to set up a play or chase down enemies. Talia is one of the more underrated mids for solo queue, and with this change, we see her slotting in as a great S tier pick. For the mid lane tier list, there are a plethora of powerful champions to choose from, with Fizz, Pantheon, Annie, Cassiopeia, and Ahri making up the OP tier. Fizz moving into OP is the only significant change we are making to the mid lane tier list this patch, as the Lichbane buffs are going to give him that extra bit of pop for mid game fights. To climb low elo the fastest from mid lane, you should consider adding Veigar, Aurelion Sol, or Annie to your champion pool. Ahri, Zed, and Fizz are 3 of the most ban-worthy mids for 13.9. The only ADC being changed for 13.9 is the only one who's really in need of a nerf, being Jinx. AD growth is going from 3.4 to 3.15. This is another one of those changes that negatively impacts Jinx a lot more for low elo than it does for high elo. Kalista saw a similar change a few patches back, but instead of seeing her AD growth lowered, it was increased. This led to about a 0.5% increase in Kalista's solo queue win rate, so pretty insignificant. We should expect something similar, but in the opposite direction for Jinx, with her likely losing up to a max of 1% from her win rate. Whether or not Jinx remains in the OP tier is a tough call, because we expect her to be right on the line between S and OP, so we'll be leaving her in OP for now, and if the nerfs are a bit more harsh than expected, she'll be adjusted into S. For the bot lane tier list, we've made a few adjustments for this patch, moving Karthus and Kog'Maw into the OP tier alongside Jinx. We've been keeping a close eye on Karthus in recent patches, and for about 4 patches in a row now, his play rate has increased every patch, with his win rate remaining extremely high. Tyler1 has been spamming Karthus bot in his challenger climb in EU, with the pick being by far his highest win rate champion, and this is likely why it's starting to be picked a lot more. Play rate of Karthus has doubled since 13.4, but his win rate has not seen a drop off, which indicates it's not just One Tricks or Tyler1 that are inflating the win rate. If you're looking to add an AP carry to your champion pool right now, Karthus is definitely the top pick, with Seraphine and Veigar being not too far behind. The optimal low elo bot lane carries of the patch include Tristana, Misfortune, and Veigar. Jinx, Xayah, and Draven are the highest value ADC bans for 13.9. Just like ADC, a very light patch for support as well, with Swain being the only champion adjusted. Buffs to Swain Q are on the way, with its base damage increased by 5 at all ranks, and the AP ratio up from 38 to 40%. Bonus damage per bolt is up as well, from 12 scaling to 52 to 15 scaling to 55. AP ratio per bolt is up from 8 to 10%. Nothing massive here that is going to propel Swain back into the support meta, so we will be leaving him in the B tier for the time being. For the support tier list, Janna, Rakan, Senna, Blitzcrank, and Melio are on a level above everyone else. You could easily construct a really nice champion pool just out of the OP tier supports right now, with Melio and Janna being great enchanter picks, Blitz and Rakan being your more aggro engaged champs, and Senna being that pure carry. The most effective support champions to climb low elo the fastest are Melio, Annie, and Zyra. Rakan, Thresh, and Melio are who you should consider banning the most. Alright guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little more about SkillCapped. So, we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, and think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered that, right? Not us. We've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium league guides on the internet. We add over 20 videos a week, with over 1,600 guides curated into over 100 courses no one can compare. We've also sent challenger players into Elo Hell 714 times and counting, where they commentate how to carry live. They also respond to all questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month if you are serious about improving. So that's going to wrap up everything for this latest update on the solo queue tier list. Thank you all so much for watching, good luck on the Rift, and we'll catch you back soon.